Good morning, back today with an instructional video on how to replace the old power supply from a BBC Micro with a nice brand new Meanwell power supply that we can rely on. So I've got the physical stuff out of the way in advance. So the problems you'll have taking this out are basically you're going to have to get the thing out of the machine to start with, which does involve removing the keyboard because of this connector sticking out. And then once you've got this out, it's not enclosed, it's just this part, and you've got this in here. Now this is a damn tight fit in this, and to get it out you are going to have to pop these mains connectors off the switch here while it's still in. I find that's a bit easier to then get the switch out. So you can get those detached, they'll still be soldered onto this. Unclip this switch, which I had to get a screwdriver in to pop these clips because they are very well in there. That was quite difficult. And I also had to pop out this connector, which is the kind of accessory connector that sticks out under the BBC. And once you've got those out, you should be able to pop the 3 screws out that hold the power supply in and kind of slide it out this way. I've then desoldered all the wires from the accessory connector, the 2 mains connectors, and the wiring harness itself. And then I have put a piece of laminate in to sort of respace things. So I've drilled the 3 holes which connect it to the outer casing, and then I have popped the new power supply on and just put a pen through the holes and marked where I want to drill. And then I think I've drilled maybe 3mm holes, I can't remember, double check. And used motherboard standoffs. Amazingly, I thought motherboard standoffs were an inexhaustible resource and a thing I just had an infinite amount of, but it turns out I've run out. But I think 3 is okay for me, but make sure you have enough of those in stock and order more if you need them. So that's given me the physical basis. I've then popped a couple of earth cables in, so the original earth points were these sort of 2 screws here, which were holding earth leads on. So I've replicated those and popped them over here. In terms of orienting this power supply, I want the output to be as close to the motherboard as possible. So this thing actually mounts in upside down. So I've got the mains power end at this end, and I've got the DC output at this end, which is towards the front, and when we flip it over, the rest of the motherboard will be over here. You can't see that. The rest of the motherboard will be over on this side, so when we flip it, that will be as close as I can get it. And hopefully that's going to give me enough length to just reuse the original wiring harness, which I think it will, because it's in roughly the same place as it was originally, if anything a bit closer this way. And because the thing is open, it's not a very tight fit. It just kind of goes through a big gap in the plastic into the main part of the computer where the motherboard is. So we've sorted out our earths. They need to go to the right side because as you can see, there's some pads here and there's some pads here, but not on the other side. And these do seem to be connected to some other traces here, but I know from previous experience they're not connected through, so that these both need to be independently connected to earth. And the way I've done that is to just attach some circular connections onto the end of the wires and then screwed in the motherboard standoffs on top of them. So once I put it in, everything will be electrically connected, and it's easy for me to plug and unplug the power supply, especially once I've got these in. So this will be by far the tidiest job I've done so far of this, having previously done 2 Amigas. So that should cover us physically. I think I'm now in a position where I can screw this down and worry about wiring up the plugs that I'm going to plug into it. So I'll have a look at that now and figure out what all the pinouts are, and probably do some truly stunning graphics for you to show you what goes where. Okay, so here is the wiring loom. So we've got the connector that sticks out under the machine for accessories, and then we've also got the rubbish but the wires that go out to the motherboard. So the motherboard takes the red wires, which should be +5, the ground wires in black, and the purple wire, which I believe is a -5. And then on the connector, the colours are slightly different. So you've got ground on black, you've got yellow, which is 12 volt, which is not used on the motherboard. And then instead of purple, you have blue for the -5. So we've had to connect all these up. So I've put all the ground from the motherboard into one connector, both of the ground from the auxiliary connector into one connector, and then 2 of the +5s from the motherboard into one, and 1 of the +5s from the motherboard and 1 of the +5s from the auxiliary connector into one, and the same for the -5, 1 from each, and 12 volts luxuriating in its own connector. I'll put, should have some on-screen graphics here, which will be extremely sophisticated, as promised. Here is the connector that's going to plug into the new power supply board. So you can see the clip is on this side, which corresponds with the kind of thick line on the diagrams and the spec sheets, and the kind of sticking up part that the clip goes onto on the far end of the power supply connector. So from the data sheet, which I will link, we can see that the first 2 sockets are +5. So depending on how badly I've mangled my soldering, we should be able to clip those in. And the clip part, which is there, so the clip part's on the side with the wire, it should go in this side where there's the kind of a hole away from the clip. So I will attempt to clip that one in. Yeah, that's all the way in. Doesn't come back out. There we go, that's clipped. Okay, so next step is going to be to plug this into the power supply and then check all the outputs match what I think they should match, and that I haven't made any mistakes, because we don't want to blow anything up. So this is very much a measure 400 times, power on once. Okay, so we've got things hooked up, and I've checked that the switch on the box is the right way round and actually turns it on and off. Got exposed mains voltage here all the time, so try not to put my finger too close, but you need to be able to see it here all the time. So be very careful not to get anything stuck in that or have probes flying around. So I've got it off, and I'm just going to turn it on when I'm actually using it. So already put it in the back of these motherboard connections because it won't go in the front. So if we turn that on, got exactly 5 volts on that pair. Turn it off again before I move the probes. And then we've got the purple wire, which is the -5, so we'll leave one of the grounds in. About -5. The values may not be exact because there's no load on the thing, but we know it's the right one. It's roughly in the right place. Let's also test the auxiliary connector. So blue was -5, wasn't it? Let's check that. There you go, that's -5. Got the yellow over here. Going to check the other ground as well. Yellow was 12, I think, wasn't it? Looks about right. Okay, and that leaves 5, I guess, on the orange. Yes, that makes sense. So we'll check that. And that's 5. And while we're doing it live, just got to be very careful not to let the probes anywhere near any of the rest of the power supply. Make sure they don't cross, etc. Although the power supply is protected against shorts and overloads and all that sort of thing, which is part of the reason we want a nice modern power supply. But why tempt fate? So that all looks good. So I guess the next step is going to be to connect everything back up on the computer, which again I need to go back and check which way round all the things are, because on the motherboard there's just a bunch of random contacts which I don't think are even labelled. So I took photos before I started, which I can go back and check. Should be mentioned, of course, that you may have a different motherboard revision and you may have different coloured wires, so you're going to have to check all of that makes sense for your particular application, and either find a diagram of the motherboard or take pictures before you disconnect stuff to make sure it's all the right way round. Right, let's get this going. Okay, so first thing is to pop in the auxiliary connector into its place. It's a bit tricky to get it clipped in, but you got to make sure it's right in there. I haven't seen an accessory for what plugs in, but I assume it's going to need a good bit of resistance when you plug against it and it doesn't pop in. And also, of course, remember that you're flipping it over and the power supply we've just fitted is on the top of the metal bit, and the cutout parts on the connector are supposed to be around the bottom here. So got that in, all in the right place, and then actually tell a lie because these things are labelled. So I know the purple one was first, and then each set is at the correct length since we reused the original wires, because I really didn't want to do all of that fiddling about. And they say 0 volt and VCC for ground and +5. So I've put all those in and then just checked them against my picture as well to be doubly sure. So everything's connected up, and now time for the part I hate, which is to power the thing on, and pray to God it works. So let's give that a go. Okay, mains power's on, just got the switch to do. Since this isn't mine, I'm extra nervous. I've had to cobble together a few things from sort of documentation for BBC Master power supply replacements, as well as looking at various motherboard resources, but there's nothing exhaustive that says do exactly this. And the fact that it has all these individual wires instead of a nice keyed plug that I can check in advance does make me nervous, but it should be fine. And I guess these things aren't that rare if I break it. Should be alright though, and if it works, you guys should have a relatively foolproof method of doing it, at least on this issue 7 motherboard, and I imagine it's fairly easy to work onto the other ones. Okay, so we've still got the thing open, we've got mains voltage here, but it should be shielded now. So let's pop this on and see what happens. That doesn't sound too bad. Got the good beep, got the light on, getting a little bit of static through here. It's kind of going woo, woo. Maybe the handful of capacitors on this board are a bit ropey, but maybe it was always like that. So no smoke, seems successful to me. Let's put it back together, and I need to check my post room and see if I've got a video cable to see if I can actually watch the thing work instead of just listening to the beeps. Okay, no video cable has arrived, hoping for a SCART one, but having checked the manual, my TV should support analog television signals. So I have connected the aerial output. Let's see if that works. Just remove the dust cover, because you know, only a savage would not keep the dust cover on their 80s computer. Give it a little boot. Beep. Okay, and now the fun of tuning. Now I did give this a try before with the original power supply to see if this was actually worth saving, but I just wasn't brave enough to leave it on for long enough to see if it worked or not. I was hoping either I could manually put in the frequency and look that up somewhere, or that it wouldn't take long to search. But it took a long time to search and I just wasn't brave enough. So now we've got the good power supply in. Hopefully it's going to find something. It's not bad, the interface on these LGs for a TV. Oh, it works! Right. So the question is, what can I do with it? It's got basic, right? So I should be able to make it do something. Let me have a look. Well, now there is a classic for you. And there we go. One BBC power supply replaced, and a BBC fighting fit for another 30 years, let us hope. Hope that's helpful to you all. I will include as much documentation and links for parts and datasheets, etc. in the description as I can. And good luck with your fettling, and I'll see you around.